Yeah, this paper originates from work that I've been doing in practice with especially telecom companies, where ramp-ups went pretty spectacularly wrong, turned out really bad, and somehow over the course of several years, I got the idea that there is a pattern here. This is not just random things that go wrong in businesses. They go every year. No, this is really the same thing happening over and over again. And trying to make sense out of that, I quite fortunately got in contact with Chris, who was sort of interested in similar topics. And that was the result. Well, the result is actually what the published paper is: 3 cases from the same telecom company over a number of years with ramp ups and associated ramp downs that all went wrong. And our explanation, carefully crafted, hopefully to some extent, of why they went wrong and what could be done about it.
Yeah, and one of the things which we started to interest us as we went through was the realization that half of what we're looking at is ramp downs. And although there's been a lot of work on ramp ups, particularly in manufacturing, no one's ever looked at ramp downs before. But actually, what happens in services is all of a sudden you have to ramp down. That raises the question of why does this occur? What triggers a ramp down? How do you ramp down? What are the impact of delays on ramp down? And ramp downs have some relationship to product recalls. So we thought this is actually a very interesting and very unexplored or maybe unique area to look at. So we actually, as we went through this, spent a lot more time looking not just at the ramp ups, but also at the ramp down and their implications. This is basically a empirical research, but it's very important. This is engaged research. The data comes from individuals, particularly Henk, working with alongside companies over an extended period of time, and over that period of time continually interacting with the organization, continually documenting what is happening, continually feeding back, and particularly through the modeling processes, talking to people, getting people to discuss the models, learning those models. So this interactive process produces an extremely rich set of data over a period of time. And this is a very strong set of empirical data going beyond what you find just in a pure case research, which gives us a lot of strength in understanding the phenomena which we're trying to examine. And so we've also used some pure case research, which is examining the interviews and also a lot of access to the in-company documentation and the data they have in the company. So we have a very, very rich set of data and a very rich set of interaction with the people over time, because one of the issues of engaged research is you're not just trying to research, you're also trying to help the organization understand and address the problems they are actually facing.
Well, findings are that although ramp up and ramp down seem as 2 very different settings, they're actually the same decision. So the same decision, which under different conditions leads to different choices. So as long as things are going well in the eyes of especially the salespeople who drive up the rate of new orders, which leads to the ramp up, well, they continue doing this. Only when they really find out that there are really big problems, they will start ramping down. But on a deeper level, the functional silos of sales and operations, and the fact that sales is rewarded for increasing the order rates, while operations is really rewarded for, well, not having lots of excess capacity. That leads to that's the underlying reason actually why these overshoots occur. Sales simply gets more orders in than operations can handle, and then the same decision process that led to the ramp up then leads to the ramp down. That's the only thing that we can do now is lower the inflow and see if we can get this pile of orders under control.
Yeah. And there's a whole series of behavioral issues associated with behind this. One of the things we see today is in services, in particularly the digital and IT-enabled services, is pressure to launch very, very quickly. Everybody's moving very fast, which means that what we see is companies are very much pressured to launch and ramp up a new service before it is fully tested, before it's fully sorted out. It is often called launching in beta. You have an alpha testing and beta testing, and when it's fully done, you launch it. What we see is a lot of pressure to launch in beta, and then hopefully, while you're ramping up, you can sort those problems out. Now, there's two realities. The reality number one is you don't always sort these problems out. Therefore, you have to have mechanisms in place for dealing with what happens when things go wrong. Reality number two is the pressures are such. It is almost unrealistic to expect companies to wait, test until it's absolutely perfect. They will have to launch while there's a potential things going wrong. So there's this balance and getting it right. And then that comes back to the information flows. In other words, one of the key things we saw in looking at ramp downs is how long it takes to make a decision to do something about it. So the delays in information flows are very important. And there's lots of things causing delays. One is just information delay. Another thing is fear of loss of face. If you're incentivized to ramp up very quickly, you do not want to cry wolf and say, we have a problem, let's stop, because you're incentivized to ramp up quickly. You also have other behavioral issues, which is called the planning fallacy. The planning fallacy is very well known in all sorts of areas, which says that you believe that things will happen, will not go wrong, and therefore you plan for something to be perfect, even though you've known it's gone wrong in the past plenty of times. You still make the same mistake over and over again. And there's a lot of evidence in these situations of the behavioral aspects of the planning fallacy. And that's very important. And so in ramp, once you've made these mistakes, then it's crucial you react as fast as possible, which means fast reaction, which means fewer delays. And it's actually a lot of similarities to product recalls. One of the biggest issues in product recalls is how long it takes you to realize you've got to recall that product before it kills people, or before it causes harm, or before it causes just damage to your reputation. We see exactly the same in services ramp ups. People delay for far too long when things are really badly wrong.
No, I think the notion of delays on both sides. There are also delays, so delays indeed in ramping up, but also delay on the operation side.
Yep.
That they really understand the need to increase capacity on that side. There are also time delays there. And once you really understand that you have to add people to the process, how long does it take to get them there? And by the time that workload really has, as a result of these delays, gone out of control, you get much more quality issues, and the quality actually are very work intensive. So even reinforce that need to add capacity. So delays on all sides, really. Yeah, it's so I've been studying and modeling ramp ups for 25 years, and the problem shouldn't be there, but the problem is still there. What is the problem? The problem is that people forget. So this company that we worked with that is now featured in the paper, actually now is currently experiencing new ramp ups. And guess what? Everybody's new. It's long ago, was a different setting. This time will be different. And so they're quite likely to make the same mistakes again. So I think the biggest takeaway of this paper is that it codifies, it writes up very nicely and hopefully coherently something that some notions about what can go wrong that practitioners can actually read and take seriously, because those pressures we just talked about, they're still there, and the delays are still there, and the behavioral fallacies are still there. So even if you have this is just a small step in getting to that wonderful situation that these ramp ups go right.
Yeah. And one of the terms often used is scalability. We talk about scaling up new products, new services, and one of the key takeaways is actually to get behind the assumptions about scaling. How scalable is it actually? With scalability of a pure IT service is relatively good, but where you become IT-enabled services, where you're trying to scale a supply chain behind that, where you're trying to scale physical things as well as service, it is nowhere near as scalable as you think it's going to be. Therefore, real attention to the reality of scalability is very important, and the realization that you're scaling both the supply chain and the product, both of which, as you scale them up, will have problems. So understanding the reality of scalability is one of the key takeaways. Well, today we've actually been talking about that. One of the areas we're looking at is the area of sales and order planning, sales and operational planning. So one of the things when we look at this in more detail is in what situations do we need sales and operational planning, and what sort of sales and operational planning might we need? So we're looking at that right now to come up with recommendations for the sorts of planning, because basically what we're arguing here is very context dependent. So understanding what the context is of your service launch, whether it's ramping up rapidly, whether it's steady state, these will help you to understand how you should manage what sort of sales and order planning you should be doing.
Yeah, I think the name of the term is quite appropriate, because if we say that the root cause lies in the functional silo nature of sales and operations, then you would like them to synchronize their work. But what does synchronizing mean? And when do you really need to synchronize? And when is it not really necessary? And there we also hope that modeling will help. As I explained, the original work was done often in the context of making a system dynamic simulation model, and all this empirical data gathering and discussion with practitioners was within that context. But the current paper really is very light on the system dynamics part. And if you want to explore under what conditions something happens, then often simulation helps you to quickly look at all sorts of alternative worlds that you haven't been able to investigate empirically yet, but that you with a simulation model can quickly look at and see where are the tipping points for certain policies and their effectiveness.